A warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. Welcome to the program this hour. Here's what's coming up within the program. Words at odds with reality. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says of fresh Russian strikes following the phone call between President Trump and Putin. Global protests against Israel's recent airstrikes on Gaza, killing hundreds of people. Plus, well, the two astronauts stranded aboard the International Space Station return home. Let's begin the world today. Ukraine has accused Russia of attacking energy facilities despite a pledge to avoid such targets for the next 30 days. It's prompted President Volodymyr Zelensky to say that President Putin's words are very much at odds with reality. During his call with the U.S. president on Tuesday, the Russian president had agreed to pause attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure for 30 days as part of a limited ceasefire, but he rejected a complete halt to fighting. The Russian president declined to sign up to the comprehensive month-long ceasefire that Trump's team recently worked out with Ukrainians in Saudi Arabia. However, there were overnight attacks on Ukraine near residential buildings, especially in the Sumy region. Zelensky accuses Putin of targeting energy infrastructure. According to him, there were 150 drones overnight targeting energy infrastructure, among other things. Russia has accused Ukraine of targeting a Russian oil storage facility in Krasnodar. The attacks on Ukraine have been confirmed by the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who was addressing an expanded meeting of the Board of Russian Prosecutor General's office in Moscow earlier today. He told them troops had recently conducted a number of swift, quite daring, effective operations and are completing the defeat of a group of enemy troops in the Kursk region. According to him, this connection under the laws of the Russian Federation, all members of the Ukrainian army, not to mention foreign mercenaries who were on the territory and committed a number of crimes against the civilian population, must be and are qualified by the laws in Russia as terrorists. According to him, the atrocities committed by them must be identified, recorded, and thoroughly investigated. President Putin said, "I asked the prosecutor's office, including military prosecutors, to fully deploy such work together with other services in the liberated territories, both in Suja and in other settlements. All those criminals, punishers, those who give criminal orders, and abuse civilians must be identified. They must receive fair punishment in the future." Putin's words. The U.S. President and Donald Trump and the Ukrainian president are expected to speak today. They're scheduled for another phone call. The White House has provided no details of the talks. President Zelensky said on Tuesday he will be speaking to Trump about details of the next steps following Trump's phone call with President Putin on Tuesday. Zelensky said he's open to a ceasefire and believes a call between Trump and Putin showed that Russia was not ready to end this war, as they're not even prepared to take the first step towards a ceasefire because they will continue to impose additional conditions. Judging by some of the news headlines in Russia, Moscow believes the latest phone conversation between their president and America's went well. U.S. National Security Advisor Mark Waltz is on his way now to speak with his Ukrainian counterpart. He will also be calling his Ukrainian counterpart after visiting his counterpart in Moscow. He has not responded to questions about Russia targeting infrastructure, breaking the terms of what Trump and Putin agreed on Tuesday. Reacting to yesterday's phone call is the French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Both leaders addressing a press conference in Berlin today. Mr. Scholz assuring Ukraine it can rely on Europe, which will not let them down. He said it is clear that U.S. support is and will remain indispensable. Now, about that phone conversation between the White House and the Kremlin on Tuesday, he said they followed the outcomes, and they've been in contact with the Ukrainian president and the United States and are in complete agreement with the ceasefire. The next steps, he says, is completing ceasefire for Ukraine as quickly as possible. President Macron said France continues to support the Ukrainian army in its war of resistance against Russian aggression. He says France is in the process of mobilizing funding to which they're fully committed to. He also praised the choice of Russia observing the 30-day ceasefire. China has been watching closely developments in Europe and approves a call between Presidents Trump and Putin. Foreign Affairs spokesperson Mao Ning on Tuesday said China has, from the beginning, advocated the resolution of the crisis through dialogue and negotiation and welcomes all efforts towards a ceasefire as a necessary step towards peace. Negotiations must include Kyiv and be based on full transparency. Dialogue between Moscow and Washington resumed last month after a landmark call between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, with 2 rounds of talks taking place. U.S. and Ukrainian delegations have held talks in Saudi Arabia, with Kyiv saying it had accepted a U.S. proposal for a 30-day ceasefire on March 13. Putin said that Moscow would support an end to hostilities in Ukraine if it would lead to sustainable peace and address the root causes of the crisis. Let's bring in former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and former Deputy Consul General to the United States, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good evening, and thanks for having me, Amarachi.
Always great to have you here, Ambassador. Do you think there was enough sincerity in that phone call between Presidents Trump and Putin on Tuesday?
You know, Amarachi, you talk of sincerity. I'm not looking at it from the point of sincerity. I'm just looking at the actors that are involved in this game. As of today, there is nobody in Washington, in the Trump administration, with the kind of experience that you find in Moscow. Think for a second how long Putin has been in power. Think for a second how long the foreign minister of Russia has been in that office. So when you think of those who are really masters of the deal, you have these two gentlemen dealing with a new bunch of actors in Washington who so far has not put together a coherent peace agreement that they can sell. So they run to Saudi Arabia, come up with one agreement, they rush to Russia and try to sell that. I've never seen a peace deal or peace negotiation that has been done in this fashion. As for sincerity, I think time will tell. But the point I'm trying to make is that I sincerely hope that this will not blow up in the face of Donald Trump, because he came to Washington thinking that he can bully his way out of everything. But this is a situation both in Ukraine and in the Middle East that he really cannot blow. I mean, how do I put it? Force everybody into what he what he believes will be the deal. No, this is a conversation you must have with the parties involved based on fairness and justice, and a situation that ensures that any peace made today will not lead to a new crisis in the future.
Once, from these talks that are taking place, but those drone strikes from Russia this morning appear to confirm what the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been saying all along, that President Putin cannot be trusted. His words cannot be trusted. He must show real efforts towards peace. He must show more commitment. What do you think was the Russian president's mindset, when he was having those talks with President Trump? Why, he agreed so very quickly to the ceasefire, even though the conditions he had given before were not met, they were not agreed to, he still went ahead and agreed a ceasefire, but then sent 150 drone strikes into Ukraine on Wednesday morning.
Actually, the Russians have not agreed to a ceasefire. They've only agreed to a limited ceasefire involving energy infrastructure. And so that leaves him open to continue to strike Ukraine. And the fact that the Americans did not insist. Imagine, look, you cannot be making peace and one party continues to beat up the other. That is not evidence of someone who wants to make peace. That is not evidence of someone who is sincere. That is a clear demonstration of someone who wants to achieve his objectives of probably taking more lands or more territories from Ukraine before agreeing to any peace deal. And the fact that the Trump administration from day one has not been putting pressure on Russia as they did on Ukraine is an example that the president of Ukraine, has his reasons to be fearful, to be afraid or worried that at the end of this might not be a good day for Ukraine. I think the Americans should just come up and be sincere, peace negotiators, whereby they are prepared to ensure that any peace agreement is based on fairness and justice and in a way and manner that is agreeable to all the parties. But you cannot be making peace or say you are making peace and the other side is, striking you like no man's business, and the others is saying, do not retaliate because we are making peace. No, that's not fair. That's not peace deal.
Yeah, that really is no diplomacy at all. And there's been no response yet from the White House, which had so much to say even before this phone conversation. According to the White House press secretary, the last 10 miles, I think, of peace was what she said. Caroline Leavitt said so yesterday. They were in the last 10 miles of peace. So much hope, for the talks, and everybody else was watching. Of course, the Ukrainians not having much expectations there. What do you think would be President Trump's response to this? However, the fact that, he thought he had it in the bag, but Russia has just shown that Russia will do what Russia will do. President Putin will carry out and execute his own plans for Russia and for Ukraine, despite what the U.S. says and despite this relationship he has with Donald Trump.
I go back to what I said at the beginning of this program. Trump and his boys are dealing with people far more experienced, far more strategic, far more focused. These are not television actors. These are people who know what they want and they are determined to get what they want. So if you come in as a peacemaker, there's a difference between your business dealings and trying to make peace between two warring factions or countries within the global situation. So it's not something that you bully yourself around and think that, you can get everybody, knock everybody together, make any peace deal, right or wrong. No. The Russians are being strategic. The Russians are focused on what they want to do, whether Donald Trump is involved or not. Look, it is to the advantage of the Russians as of today to agree that energy infrastructures should be removed from those to be attacked, because that gives Russia the comfort that they can at least keep their own infrastructure. Meanwhile, they have virtually destroyed all energy infrastructure in Ukraine, with the exception of the fact that Ukrainians are rebuilding once they are struck here and there. So you can really see a situation that my position is the Americans should, for a while, calm down. They just come in less than 30 days or so. They should just calm down, formulate a fair peace deal, and then try and sell it to both parties. Not just go and say, look, I'm going to talk to Putin and I'll make a deal. It is not going to work that way. We have to go back and think of the days of Kissinger and the rest of them who have negotiated peace around the world. They did far more work in strategic fashion than what you are seeing people in Washington today do. This is not what you are seeing. In fact, you made a statement that there's been no statement from
The White
from
House.
Washington. For a man that has spent the last 30 days of his regime appearing on television every day, that he has not even come to television in the last almost 12 hours to talk about his this thing, is very interesting and a good observation you've made.
Indeed. So we're learning now that that expected phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky has taken place. It was an hour-long phone call, according to the U.S. president. Much of the discussion was based on the conversation Trump had with Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. I mean, on what basis are they really having this conversation? You can already see that this deal is falling apart, this agreement. So what can the U.S. even offer to Ukraine at this time?
Again, precisely, that's a very interesting question. I think, look, what the United States can offer Ukraine, if the United States is serious, is to lean on Russia to make peace. You do not make peace and lean on only one side. No. Trump started on a bad note by saying that Ukraine invaded, or that the Russians did not invade Ukraine, whichever way he put it. So you can see a biased Trump already. And I think the reality is dawning on Trump now. Look, he said it a couple of weeks ago that he'll be ready to impose sanctions on Russia. I sincerely doubt if he would do that. If he's going to do that, I think that the opportunities are now presenting themselves for him to do that in order to pressurize Putin to make peace. If there's no strong pressure on Putin, there will be no peace agreement as soon as possible. That we should all, I think we can all see that coming. Because I make the point again that in Moscow, you have a bunch of people far more experienced, far more strategic, far more determined to achieve what they want than the president of America and his new, voice on the stage, does realize.
Where does this uncertainty leave the rest of Europe? Leaders of France and Germany held talks today where they declared unwavering support for Ukraine, but they still have to rely on the United States for military support. So can they still consider the U.S. a steady ally?
Well, as of now, they have no choice. But I just think that the best they can do themselves, if they are serious to demonstrate that they want some, they don't want to distance themselves from America, but they also want to sincerely support Ukraine, is to give Ukraine the arsenals it needs to defend itself until a peace deal is made. Look, all these rhetorics about supporting Ukraine, giving Ukraine some money, I think they should be sincere themselves. What Ukraine needs today is guns, is bombs, airplanes, strikes rockets that can get into Russia, or at least, and the dome that can help defend its Ukrainian citizens when the Russians do strike. If Europe can provide this, it will strengthen the negotiating power of Ukraine itself, so that Ukraine does not make a mistake and let go quite a number of its territories. So I believe the Europeans have done enough of rhetorics. They are in a position to supply. They have actually been doing more than the United States. Where they are today, they need to do more to strengthen the ability of Ukraine to get a fair peace deal.
Right. Ambassador Keshi, always a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you for joining us on The World Today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Amarachi, for having me.
Let's turn now to the Middle East, where Israel's recent bombardment of Gaza is being condemned by aid groups and rights groups. The UN says one of its workers has been killed and others injured after a compound in Gaza was damaged earlier today. And the circumstances of the incident remain unclear. The Palestinian Territory's Hamas-run health ministry has blamed the Israeli strike and said 5 critically injured foreign workers had arrived in hospital. Israel has denied striking the UN compound in Deir al-Balah. It comes after Israel said it was resuming fighting in Gaza following a 2-month ceasefire. launching a wave of strikes that killed more than 400 people, according to Gaza's health ministry. On Tuesday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it had resumed combat in full force. The UN initially said 2 of its workers had been killed, but later clarified the second person was not a staff member. We're off on a short break now. When we return, former Haiti ambassador to the United Kingdom says his country has every right to join the African Union. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. We continue our focus on the Middle East. Spokesperson for the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Tamin Al-Kitan, says the world body is horrified by the Israeli airstrikes, which will add to tragedy already on the ground. The last 18 months of violence have been abundantly clear that there is no military path out of the crisis. The only way forward is a political settlement in line with international law. Head of the Office for the Occupied Palestinian Territory, Ajit Sangay, speaking remotely from Amman, says the scenes of mutilated bodies are a reminder of Gaza's recent past.
We are horrified by last night's Israeli airstrikes and shelling in Gaza, which killed hundreds, according to the Ministry of Health in the Strip. This will add tragedy onto the tragedy. Israel's resort to yet more military force will only heap further misery upon a Palestinian population already suffering catastrophic conditions.
We're again seeing the scenes of mutilated bodies of children and bodies wrapped in shrouds. It is unacceptable, even unimaginable, to once again find ourselves talking about this instead of supporting a path towards meaningful recovery and sustainable peace. Simply, this violence and the killing must stop immediately. The hostages must be released. Those arbitrarily detained must also be freed.
In another development, tens of thousands gathered in Tel Aviv's Habima Square on Tuesday night in protest against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's move to dismiss Shin Bet chief Ronen Bar. The decision comes amid an ongoing investigation into alleged ties between Netanyahu's aides and Qatar. Netanyahu has pushed to remove intelligence chief Bar, citing a continuing lack of confidence in his ability, and that the distrust only grew with time. The cabinet will meet later today to vote on the dismissal. The protests, one of the largest in recent months, comes hours after Israel ended the ceasefire in Gaza, carrying out extensive strikes on the region, which several Arab nations have called a violation of the ceasefire agreement. Netanyahu has denied accusations that the renewed fighting was politically motivated, but opposition figures argue the ceasefire and hostage negotiations were derailed for political gain. Well, there's another protest in the Whitehall area near Downing Street in London to condemn the resumption of airstrikes by Israel on Gaza. The demonstrators rallying with Palestinian flags, signs and placards bore slogans that were heard condemning UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer while letting off red smoke grenades. General Secretary of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, Sophie Bolt, expressed concerns over the orders for Gazans to flee the enclave as the precursor to greater, more prolonged slaughter.
Last night was one of the deadliest nights the Palestinians have faced since the beginning of the genocide. Over 400 martyrs, 130 innocent children. Why is this continuing? The answer is pure and simple. Zionism is a disease. The Zionist entity, the Israeli administration, they care more about killing Palestinians than peace. They would prefer to continue killing as long as it meant that they can continue to have power over us.
CND is deeply concerned that the latest evacuation orders are the precursor to even greater, more prolonged slaughter.
Today's protest is an emergency response to the absolute catastrophe, the absolute carnage that's been unleashed by the Israelis in the last 24 hours. The ceasefire was already tenuous, it was hanging by a thread, but now the Israeli government have deliberately, have consciously broken the ceasefire, have sent a warning to the Palestinians in Gaza to leave the north of the area, have perpetrated another criminal act that even David Lammy, even the despicable David Lammy has had to say was a violation of international law.
There were also pro-Palestinian protests in the French capital, Paris, on Tuesday over Israel's renewed airstrikes on Gaza. Dominique Cochon, a protester and lawyer, described the ongoing situation as a form of genocide, saying genocide is not just bombing, it's not just killing from planes, it's also making living conditions absolutely impossible, cutting off electricity, cutting off water, preventing the desalination plant from operating, depriving tens of thousands of people of access to water, displacing people, blocking the access of humanitarian lorries and starving them. According to him, these are all elements of genocide. The genocide has never stopped. Let's bring in now international affairs analyst Curtis Adigba. Thank you for joining us on the program today, Curtis. Curtis, I'm hoping that you can hear me, but I think that your microphone is still muted.
Hello?
Great. There we have it. We can hear you now. Thanks for joining us on the program. I wanted to get your thoughts on, these pro-Palestinian protests that are taking place across the world, especially in Europe. We've just seen the one in France. We've seen one in the UK. We heard leaders being called names. We've also heard the protesters calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide. What do you think?
I agree with them. I mean, this is more like genocide. People went to bed not anticipating any form of problem because of the ongoing ceasefire. And then they woke up the next day to discover that over 400 people were murdered in the night. It's not a short of genocide.
So do you think that one of the main reasons that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has violated the ceasefire, which he hasn't given reasons for, is because he has the backing of the U.S. president, who had once given him approval that if Hamas did not keep its part of the deal, that Israel could go ahead and bomb Gaza?
Yeah, Netanyahu is dark and dystopian. He has a very dark character, and he's a warmonger. This is someone who derives his oxygen from constantly fighting. And I'm not saying that Israel does not have the right to defend itself, okay? Israel has been doing that, and the world agreed with Israel that to some extent they have the right to respond in measured terms against the attacks on Israelis by the Palestinians on the 7th of October 2024, 2023. Then there was a ceasefire, of course, which both parties were keeping until Netanyahu struck last night. It was horrible. 2 nights ago, it was horrible. And he's doing this because now he has someone in the White House who behaves and acts like him. Don't forget that when he visited President Trump last time, right in the Oval Office, these two men were talking about taking Gaza and turning it into a delightful real estate. Talked about how they're going to move away the people from there. And the constant, encouragement from Trump threatening Gaza, if you don't release the hostages that you are still holding, hell will be let loose. We are going to wipe out the whole place and all that. It's encouraging Netanyahu to be more brutal and to go out there to attack these people,
So the goal really was supposed to be the release of Israeli hostages, but is there any hope that any more hostages will be found with all this bombardment going on?
Well, at this moment, this is like the way Netanyahu is going, he is providing clear opportunities for this Hamas to murder the remaining hostages and claim that they were killed by Israeli fire, and not that they killed them. I think that the proper thing to do here is to allow the ceasefire to hold. Because up until now, Netanyahu cannot establish a clear case that Hamas has abandoned the ceasefire. In fact, they have been releasing hostages as envisioned in that ceasefire agreement. So I expected him, and the world expected him, to work with that ceasefire and not just to escalate the tension and then go forward to murder people the way they did 2 nights ago.
So Israel goes on to ignore the international community. No UN resolution has been able to keep the Prime Minister Netanyahu from executing his plans on Gaza. Can we refer to Israel at this point as a rogue state?
Well, Israel has never respected any resolution of the United Nations. And that is because the U.S. is always there to use the veto, even from the resolutions having any effects. And most times, prevent the resolution from being arrived at. So, we understand it. Israel has gotten away with a lot of things. You also hear people say, but Israel doesn't act unless it's provoked. But of course, we have to get to the point where we realize that this is a war that has no end in sight, because you have recalcitrant individuals either on the side of Israel and the side of Hamas. So, yes, you are right to describe, or some people are right to have described Israel as a rogue state. But Israel has got to be held to account some days, because these are human beings we are talking about. I say to some people, just imagine going to bed tonight and tomorrow you wake up and almost all your folks are dead, just because someone felt that they have the power to exert the highest damage to you unchallenged. And then the only justification is that these people are chosen by God. But I want to believe that God has interest in every life that he has created, and he also wants them to be with him when they die. So we have to tell ourselves the truth. Israel is not doing the right thing right now, and so for that, you can describe them as a rogue state. Yes, that's okay.
How do you think that the Prime Minister's actions have been interpreted back home in Israel? I know that at some point during these attacks on Gaza, previous attacks, following the main attack by Hamas militants on innocent Israelis, people did call on him to step down. They did ask him to leave office, and it does seem like the people really didn't have much confidence in him. But his recent actions, do you think they bolster these feelings of discontent with the way Prime Minister Netanyahu's government has gone about this war against Hamas, because what the people really want is just for the hostages to come home. But at this point, there is no hope of that happening. So do you think that Netanyahu is still as popular as he should be back in Israel?
First and foremost, Bibi depends on the war to stay in office. Now, if the attacks on Israel didn't happen, Bibi would have been out of office by now. So he holds on to this war as an opportunity to stay in office. Now, if you go to Israel, it's a mixed kind of feeling. There are those that overwhelmingly want the hostages to return home, and they feel that the way to do that, the best way to do that, is to get the Israeli government and the Hamas and the Palestinian people represented by Hamas, especially in Gaza, to keep the ceasefire agreement that has been signed and kept by the two parties until 2 days ago. But on the other hand, you have the hawks, the hardliners, who believe that this is an opportunity to wipe out Hamas once and for all. And they have the backing of the U.S. president. And so what Netanyahu right now is doing is like saying to the Israelis, look, you love sausage, you love to eat sausage, but you can't make sausage without spilling blood. And so we've got to finish this job once and for all. And don't forget that it's also against the two-state solution, of course, which has been on the table for years. However, what we see here is that Netanyahu is beginning to think that as long as this war remains, the hardliners in Israel will keep him in power. Because you don't want to change the leadership when your country is at war. That's just his belief.
Mr. Adigba, a real pleasure having you on the program today. Thanks for your analysis.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Amarachi. Thanks.
In other news, South African officials have reacted to the Trump administration's decision to expel Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool, emphasizing the need to maintain diplomatic ties with the U.S. despite the growing tensions. Chairman of the International Relations Committee at Parliament, Supra Mahupelo, downplayed the expulsion. Mahupelo defended Rasool's remarks that led to his removal, arguing that they aligned with South Africa's diplomatic stance.
For me, it's nothing to worry about, really, based on how the presidency of the U.S. is approaching geopolitics. It's not adhering to multilateralism. It's unilateralist in approach and so on. So I'm sure there will be a new ambassador. The president said that yesterday. And even that new ambassador, we must expect that something might happen in future. So in the first place, there's nothing wrong that Ambassador Rasool said. Nothing wrong. There might be issues from analysts about the timing, the platform, whether an ambassador should have said. But in terms of content and our posture as a country, and as far as some of the political issues in the U.S. are concerned, there's nothing wrong that he said. But life must go on. We must pursue very aggressively our relationship with the U.S.
The President of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, and Minister Lamola has been unequivocal that the decision obviously was regrettable. In particular, the diplomatic nuances that underpinned it, but we remain convinced to strengthen what we regard as South Africa a strategic bilateral relationship with the United States of America.
It's a misplaced decision, and I think it reinforces, the assertion that the re-emergence of white supremacist view on our country since the ascendancy of Donald Trump seems to be at another level. And worsening this situation is the fact that we find unpatriotic South Africans peddling wrong information about our beloved country to countries like America.
So I think what this requires with Ambassador Rasool is, again, like the issues with Trump, and South Africa and other countries is to find ourselves in the same room, around a table, and sort these things out. It's not going to be resolved in corridors. We just need to sit down and be mature enough to talk about these things and see it for what it is.
The Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has responded to the Trump administration giving powers to the U.S. Congressional Foreign Affairs Subcommittee to impose sanctions on Nigeria over the killing of Christians in the country. A statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed its concern over the matter, saying the unfortunate development is intended to influence foreign governments, especially the United States government, to designate Nigeria a country of particular concern due to the violence against Christians. It says that while the federal government acknowledges the security challenges confronting the nation, it is imperative to clarify that these negative activities are not driven by religious bias nor targeted against any particular religious group. It should be noted, it says, that the majority of incidents relating to insurgency and banditry that occur in the predominantly Muslim northern part of Nigeria are not targeted at followers of a particular faith or religion. Any narrative that seeks to give such incidents a coloration of religious persecution is erroneous and misleading. Joining us now is the Chairman, House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Honorable Wole Oke. Honorable Oke, thank you so much for joining us on The World Today.
Thank you, ma'am, for inviting me.
And I understand that there was a meeting today between your committee and members of your committee, beg your pardon, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in actual sense. Would you let us in on what transpired?
Yes, the Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Metematuga, caused appearance before our committee to brief us extensively over the issue, and he did brief us extensively, and we are fully aware of all the issues aside what we have read or heard on the social media and television. So we have a very comprehensive brief from the Honorable Minister.
This was just to inform you about what happened, but you guys didn't get to discuss the concerns of the U.S. government and what the response of the Nigerian lawmakers should be, because I'm considering that there should be a response coming from our own lawmakers, since these threats of sanctions will be coming from the U.S. Congress.
Well, thank you. Interestingly, Nigerian democracy system is tailored. You know, after that of United States, we both run presidential system. We have bicameral legislature. We have committees, standing committees of the House. We have subcommittees. So we are governed by similar rules of engagement. And when a subcommittee of the standing committee of the House of the Congress conduct its affairs, I'm of the opinion that it's still subject to the consideration of the parent committee vis-a-vis committee of the whole before you can begin to take this issue seriously. I am a bit worried that I don't want any person or group of person to drag our presidency to even the minister, to the subcommittee of the parliament, proceedings. When a lawyer writes a letter, the proper thing to do is to allow a fellow lawyer to reply such a letter, because he will understand the terminologies and all the issues canvassed. Having said that, I found the report of the subcommittee a bit worrisome, because in all honesty, it does not reflect the true and correct happenings in Nigeria. Let me say this clearly. I grew up in the north, in the whole Sokoto state that comprises Sokoto, Kebbi, and Zamfara. And if you look at all the attacks and killings in Tafe and all the area and Sokoto, would you say that you have Christians, that it is Christians that are being killed in those areas. Or when you look at happenings in Borno State, in Yobe State, would you say it is a Christian that are being killed? So terrorism, banditry, it has no color of religion at all. It's amounts to insecurity. And of course, the crafters of our constitution, obviously put it on our shoulder that the purpose of government, shall be the security and the welfare of citizens. And I think this government is not taking this responsibility for granted. I'm proud to tell you that they are confronting the issues frontally. You can also look at it legislatively. You can see the funding being appropriated to the security sector to be able to, put this issue of insecurity at check. So for now, our position is that one, we do not know when the public hearing by the subcommittee took place. From our findings, I do not think that proper parties were before the committee to ventilate their opinions, based on the group that presented their case that Christians are being killed by Muslims in Nigeria. It's untrue. Nigeria is a very peculiar country, very, very wonderful country where you can see unity in diversity. For example, the number one, our president, the chief diplomat of the country, is a Muslim. His wife is a pastor. My mother is also from Muslim background in Ikiru, My father is of the Christian extraction. In Osun State, we intermarry. When it is Salah period, you see all of us, enjoy us. When it is Easter or Christmas, you see all of us work together, we dress together, we eat, with fanfare, we intermarry. No, but religion is not even an issue. Go to Osun State where you have Governor Ademola Adeleke. His father is a Muslim, his mother is a Christian, and you watch the governor. He goes to worship in the church. He also worship in the mosque. That is the peculiarity of a country. So I found that report of the subcommittee very worrisome, and we interwork together. We have parliamentary friendship groups. We also have, I chaired the standing committee of foreign affairs in the House. We also have similar committee in the United Congress. We shall interface, and honestly, we will let them understand the true situation of the country. I want to submit that subcommittee honestly was wrongly informed. Sometimes when you misinform people are likely to misbehave. That is not the truth of the matter. They don't have the facts of the matter. And from the brief of the Honorable Minister, they have done their bits, by getting a Washington mission to make a presentation. They've also issued press release here to address the issue. I've had the privilege of meeting with the political desk from the United States Embassy in Abuja here, and they also are aware, because I briefed them extensively. Right. That report does not really present the true situation of things in the land, and we don't want any external propaganda, to trigger religious crisis in this country.
Honorable Wale Oke, thank you so much for joining us on the program. We appreciate your coming on, taking time out of your busy schedule to speak on the issue. Thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, very quickly to other stories. A horrific story coming from the UK, north of London. A teenager who murdered 3 members of his family and also planned to carry out a school massacre in the UK has been sentenced to life with a minimum term of 49 years in jail. The 19-year-old used a shotgun to kill his mother, 48-year-old Juliana Falcon, his brother Kyle, who was 16 years old, and 13-year-old sister Giselle at their home in Luton on September 13, 2024. He was arrested in the hours after the murder on his way to his former school, St. Joseph's Catholic Primary School in Luton. A Crown Court Justice Chima Grubb said Nicholas Prosper wanted to unleash disaster on the community of Luton. His sentencing revealed that Nicholas's plan would have seen him kill 34 people in total, his family, a class of 4 and 5-year-old children at his old primary school, 2 teachers, and then finally himself. He'd hoped to kill his family while they slept, but his mother woke up, and it seems she confronted her son following a noisy struggle. Prosper's neighbors in the tower block alerted the police, meaning the killer had to leave his home hours ahead of schedule and schools opening for the day. He'll serve 48 years and 177 days in prison once his time already served in remand has been deducted. Well, Haiti's former ambassador to the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, Jean Pillard, has advocated the Haiti joining the African Union, saying that the intercontinental body needs to consider membership of the Caribbean nation. He was delivering a lecture at the Pan-African University of Science and Technology in Abuja.
The question before you is that whether Haiti belongs to Africa, the question is, can Africa recognize what history has never erased? To understand Haiti's rightful place in the African Union, we must go back to the most extraordinary event in the history of Black liberation, the Haitian Revolution, from 1791 to 1804. Haiti was not granted its independence. Haiti tore its freedom from the jaws of empires, turning the impossible into destiny. Enslaved Africans, stolen from their homelands, rose against the most powerful empire of its time.
More of Ambassador Pillard's thoughts can be found on Network Africa. You can rewatch after this program. Now, the SpaceX Dragon Freedom capsule with astronauts Sunita Williams, Butch Wilmore, Nick Hague, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbunov has returned to Earth and in NASA's extended Space Crew 9 mission aboard the International Space Station. The capsule descended and deployed parachutes before splashing onto the ocean off the coast of Tallahassee in Florida. Recovery teams were seen securing the capsule, opening the hatch, and retrieving the astronauts who waved to the cameras.
Next up, we'll stand by for the main deployment of the parachutes. You're looking at 800 meters. A live view of Crew 9, just minutes away from Splom, glass-like ocean off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Crew 9 just minutes away from splashing down.
That
Copy,
was
600.
That was a live view from our recovery vessel.
Wonder what 9 months in space is like. As we end the program, the United Arab Emirates has opened its first digital detox clinic for children to combat screen addiction in Abu Dhabi. Dinesh Panwar, consultant director of pediatrics at the Yas Clinic, explains how some children become verbally or physically aggressive when phones or tablets are taken away, with their social life, sleep patterns, and even physical health all affected. Well, this clinic offers a specially designed program to combat excessive screen use, helping them regain their digital balance. It's run by the Abu Dhabi Stem Cell Center.
Hello, hi, how are you today? Yeah, you're being good. To learn the mouth organ.
I know here in Africa, the biggest detox will be taking away those devices from those teenagers. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.